That's okay.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to today's class. So we're doing our little rooster today, and this is day 4 of 5. So these are your notes that you would have received, and on the front page there, you've got information about the colours and the papers and what's going to happen in the class today. It's going to be in two parts today. So the first part, same as yesterday, we're going to do a charcoal sketch of the rooster and just have a practice run of that. And the second part, we're doing the colour sketch or colour version in pastels. So you'll have your reference image there as well. You can see on those images, I've put a little crosshairs or lines across the centres. So that's to grid up the picture, and that will help us draw it in proportion. So we're going to have a bit of a drawing lesson as well today, as well as doing the charcoal and the pastels. So the first part of today's class will be about the charcoal. Make sure you've got your image nice and close so you can see it clearly. We really only need to refer to the black and white picture on your page 1 at this stage. And we're going to draw up the rooster in proportion on your page. And then we're going to look at the tones, because the tones are what's really important. It doesn't actually matter what colours you use today, as long as you have them in the right tone. So we need to make sure we've got darks and mids and lights. All right, so let me share my screen and we'll get stuck into it. I can see some of my ladies might be already stuck into it.
Louise, have you started already?
A little bit. I'm terrible at drawing.
Whoopsie daisy. Oh, I'm going to do the square. I'm going to do the rectangle.
This is what happens when you get familiar with the procedure, because then you can jump in ahead and get started. It's fun. Good. All righty. So here is my table. Oh, what a mess. I probably should sort some stuff out there. Oh, while I've got this in front of me, I've picked out a piece of green paper today. I said on the notes to use something dark. Well, black is great, but I don't have any black paper, weirdly enough. I've got every other colour under the sun, but no black. So I thought I'll go for green because it's a dark tone. And this is a good colour because my blacks will show up on it and also my lights. So think about that too when you're choosing paper for your artwork, what's going to work best. And we're not filling a background in today either. So the paper colour will show through. Yeah? So no big background filling in things today.
I just prefer that because I find I smudge a lot. I'm a smudger.
It's easy to smudge.
I'm good at smudging.
Yeah, it's a very smudgy medium, unfortunately. Yeah. But that's kind of what I like about it. It just makes it a bit more interesting, I think. Bit of fun. Okay, so I'm just going to get my page into the right spot. I already put some fingerprints on there. I smudge too, obviously. Okay, and make sure you've got your rooster picture handy. So I'll just move that across so I can see it next to my page. So if you look at your thumbnail there, you can see that we've got a rectangular shape. So that it's, again, I've made this to fit, or proportion-wise, to fit into an A3 or A4 page or size. So if you just draw up your frame like that, in about the same proportion as your A4 page that you've got, that you're working on. And then we want to, if you have a ruler handy, where did I put my ruler?
Oh, I didn't rule it.
There's one. Usually have about
Thank you, baby.
6 or 7 rulers lying around in various places. You don't have to use a ruler, but I like to try and keep my lines reasonably straight. Probably should measure that, but I'm just going to go by eye and put your grid mark on there. So the grid mark is going to help us to do the drawing. And this is what I usually use when I'm drawing something up, that, you know, I need to have the dimensions or the proportions correct. And that happens for most things, you know, like what do we do with the clouds? Probably not so important because you can kind of have a bit of poetic or artistic license with those. They don't have to be precise. But when you're doing things like animals, faces, still life, fruit, that kind of thing, it's really important to try and get your proportions right if you're a realist painter. If you want to be a bit more abstract, then you don't have to do that so much. So what we're going to do is break this down into quarters. So we're going to look at the top left quarter first. And if it's easier for you, you can cover up the other quarters and just ignore them for now. So this is a good way to learn to draw. And what we want to do is work out where all these bits and pieces sit inside this quarter of your page. So what you want to notice first is where it crosses over on the crosshairs. So you can see here on the bottom left quarter, that side of the rooster crosses at about here. I like to put little dots or marks in those places where it crosses the line. And then up the top, so the crest or whatever that thing's called on its head comes to about there-ish. So when you mark out those spots, it just makes it a little bit easier to get everything, you know, in the right place. So what you can do is come down to this first mark, and then we want to curve that line up. So this is the neck, curve it up through there to get the right kind of angle or shape on the side of the neck there. And then as you come up there, you can see at the top of the head, the little crest comes out from there. So we're just going to draw that out like that. And then we've got 3 triangle shapes that sit up from there before we get to our grid line. So something like that. Don't try to be too precise. We're just getting familiar with the drawing at this stage, or the shapes. Okay, so we'll ignore what's in the other quarter until we finish off in here. So now we've got to look at where the top of the head goes and the eye. So above the eye, see, you've got this little soft sort of round shape coming through here, just there. And then we've got this skin area around the eye, which on our black and white image is a mid kind of grey. So we draw that sort of shape there. And then we've got the eye inside. So the eye's quite small. It's amazing how in animal portraits, you see the eyes, and it's usually, you know, that's the first thing you look at, but it's often the smallest part of the whole thing. It's hard to get into those little tiny areas with chunky sticks of charcoal or pastel or whatever you might be using. Okay. And then later on, you can add a little bit of a shine through into there with either a white charcoal pencil or rubbing it out with your kneadable eraser. So just a few more little details in there. We've got that little lumpy thing underneath the eye on the left. And then we've got that funny little white shape. So that's quite important, isn't it? Because that really tells us what this animal is. So most animals have specific shapes or features on them that helps us to recognize them. And most of us will recognize specific animals and shapes. And that's why it's important to get your drawing right. And then we come down and we've got that flappy thing. I don't know what all these things are actually called. I just make up my own names for them. So excuse my ignorance. Feel free to correct me. I won't remember it though. Got that flap thing that comes down through there, and then it crosses over the line about there. So can you see how just staying within that quarter really helps to work out where everything is kind of sitting? Lovely. All right. So, and of course we can put more detail and more shadow and bits and pieces in around there too as we go. And then inside that flap and under the eye and coming from the beak, so the beak kind of comes back in. It's just about level with the eye on its where it sits. And then we've got a little shape through there. And then we've got that interesting curve down through that flap, just through here. That reminds me of an ear when you first look at the shapes in there. Just coming down through there. This is where all the detail is in the chicken or the rooster. And so that's what's going to take up a bit of time, is just getting all that shading and shapes correct. And after that, everything's a bit more loose and free. So that's pretty much the head area inside there. And then you can just come down and do a bit of the kind of the feathery, wispy shapes down in through here. So I've got all this lovely soft feather that sits down on the left-hand side, or our left, of the rooster's neck. And similar to our grass class yesterday, we're going to do lots and lots of really loose kind of marks like this to get the thickness of the feathers and create the beautiful texture. Okay, so that's that part of that quarter. You can actually darken off inside here under where the chest is. Blacken off through there a little bit if you want to create a bit of drama. I like drama in my art, not in my life, but definitely in my art. Okay, so that's that quarter basically done. And you can come back and tidy it up afterwards, but it's got the basic shapes and it's kind of helping us get everything in proportion. So let's move across to the right-hand side now. So on the right, you can see there's a really big white area, and that's all the area of the background that we're not going to worry about today. So this is what I call negative space. So if you look at that white area around the rooster on that top right quarter, it's empty. And that's often a really good reference when you're trying to get your shapes of something. It's often a really good reference to look at to figure out your shapes, because you can see a shape in the negative space rather than the shape in the subject. So let's look at that on this side and see if we can use the negative space shape, or the white area, to draw in what we need to put in on this quarter. Okay, so what we can do is we can start here on the crown of the head, come down in that little shape there, and then we have the beak that pops out. So we've got this little beak, pointy beak that pops out over there. It's sort of lighter underneath and darker on the top, so it's got a bit of shadow on the top. That shadow is being cast by the head. So you can draw in the beak, and it kind of then just joins up with what we did before, hopefully. And then we can draw in this shape here, just to continue the flap under the beak. And then that again joins up with what we've already done. And then we come down into that corner in the middle there where everything intersects. And we've got a little line just through there. And that's all we have inside that section. And then on the other side, we've got this beautiful big shape that comes through here, which is the tail feathers. And if you have a look at that, you can see the tail feathers finish at about halfway down inside that quarter. So you can put a little marker there to give yourself a bit of a guide. And then that will kind of guide you to come down and join up probably about a quarter of the way in from the center at this point here. Does that make sense? And then you can kind of just draw a line, nice little sort of arched line down through there. And that is the shape of the negative space. So if you can look at your white space in the image and check it with what you've got going on, you can see that we've actually been able to create the same shape in the white, if that makes sense. So negative space is a really helpful way to find shapes and to draw things in proportion. Sometimes if you look at the image you're trying to do, it gets really confusing and it's a bit, oh gosh, you know, I don't know how wide that is. And when you're used to looking at a shape, for instance, I don't know, an apple or whatever, say an apple, we know what apples look like. We're really familiar with those shapes. We recognize them everywhere. And when you go to draw it, often we don't draw it the way it actually is. So to draw things the way they actually are, if you use negative space, it just somehow makes it a little bit easier. Just going to put a little dip there. We've also got a little bit of white space just on the right side there of that top feather in the tail. There's a little tiny corner poking in through there. If you make a mistake, just use your kneadable eraser to remove it. Okay, so that's our basic shape for the tail. Easy peasy. Let's do the same thing down in this bottom quarter now. That's going to be even easier if you look at the negative space rather than the shape of the rooster. So see here at the top, we're going to join these two lines. So we're going to make a triangle there, little white triangle inside this quarter. That's easy. And then down here is a really fun shape too. That's quite interesting, isn't it? So that little white shape there, don't look at all the feathers, just look at this shape and draw the outline of that. So we come in on the top here at about a third of the way down, I guess. I'll try to break things into thirds and quarters. It just makes it a bit easier. Okay, and come down through there and then drawing that shape, long sort of shape through here. And then we come back up and we go down again and around, and we've just got a few little loose bits, wispy bits. Comes down, down, and then ends at about just short of halfway, about there, off the page. So this rooster is going to bleed off our page today. It's going to, yeah, we're not going to see all of him. Can't see his feet or the end of the tail. So that's that shape. Basically, we've got everything we need to put into that area there. And then on the other side, really, really easy. We've just got two little white spots, two triangles basically, one down here in the corner. So you can start your mark at about halfway up and in that quarter, and then bring it your line across to about there. And then same up here as you come in, just mark it like that. So now we've got our rooster drawing all in the right proportions. Okay, so that's a really handy way to learn to draw something, and especially when you've got a lot more detail, and you can break your page up into even more grids if you want to. And it really does help just to break it into little segments. It's like, when you have a big project, you just want to break it into smaller pieces to make it more manageable. All right, so now let's do a bit of shading. I'm going to use a longer stick this time because I want to kind of have a nice loose feel. So because I've got a longer stick, I can hold it at the very end. Don't hold it like you would a pen. So don't hold your charcoal like this, because what that does is it really limits your movements. Unless you want to do short, sharp, refined marks, and you can if you want to, okay, like that. So when you're doing finer work or more detailed work, you can really hold your charcoal tight and do smaller marks. But to do big loose ones, I like to hold it at the end. That keeps your stick a little bit looser and a little bit freer and not so constrained. Okay, so up to you how you do it, but I like to do it sort of loose and just keep it on the page as well. So let's work our way down from the neck. We've got this beautiful dark area. If you're feeling like you want to fill all that lovely dark in, we can do that actually. I'm going to use a shorter stick. I'm going to go back to my short stick and just try and run it across my page. Just because we've got such a large area to fill in with the darks. So let's just do it this way. That's quicker then. And it's the same theory with your pastel sticks. Lying them down on the side like this, you can just get a bigger area covered in a lot faster. Just try to leave some of those feathery areas up here around the neck and on the tail, etc., so we can get some more light in there. And we might have to use either a charcoal pencil or your eraser to take some of the charcoal out, just to lighten it up a little bit. All right, so I've got my chest nice and dark. And now coming over to the feathers here on the tail is going to be fun. So you can see these feathers here, the ones that are directly behind the body, just kind of come down and they sort of hang, don't they? They're sort of longish. So use your longer charcoal stick to get that feeling, that lovely long, loose sort of expression. You don't need to do too many. If you do too many, it'll get too dark and you won't have enough definition between your lights and your darks. And where you want it to be a bit darker, press a little bit harder. And where you want it to be slightly lighter, you can press a little bit lighter. Okay. And as we come up to this halfway mark here, see there's a little white patch the feathers in the tail there. So that's a lovely light patch. That's one of the lightest patches on this guy, apart from the little white thingy up here on his face. That's the whitest area. Okay, so we probably want to keep that reasonably clean or unfilled with the charcoal because we want to try and keep it nice and white. So see if you can kind of work around that and leave that area unfilled if possible. It's a bit hard to do sometimes. You get a bit carried away and forget, and then it ends up all filled up. But that's okay because you can just take it out again. And when we do it with pastel, we'll just use white pastel or light pastel to get that beautiful bright in there. So as you're doing this, just look at the direction of those feathers. Which way are they falling? And try to follow the direction of those. So all these center feathers on the tail are kind of going sideways and in the same direction. And then if you look closely, you might need to look at your colored version. There's one feather up here at the back that kind of goes this way. You can see the vein of it in the middle there. And then the feather sort of comes out from there in a kind of beautiful sweeping top on it, but it actually sticks up in the opposite or a different direction to these other big ones. So just noticing those shapes and moving your charcoal around in the direction that they grow. And again, you can use a white or your eraser to get your whites back in if you lose them, which is easy to do with charcoal. Okay. And then we've got that little feather at the back there, and it's also got a lovely strong white vein in it, so I might have to put that back in. It's very dark. All of this is quite dark, so you can use beautiful dark greens and dark blues, and purples are gorgeous in here. So we can make this fella all these beautiful colours. Lots and lots of fun. I love using brights. It's heaps of fun. So that's just a very quick little exercise to practice the drawing and get familiar with the shape, so that when we go to draw it up the second time for the charcoal or pastel, then you'll be more familiar with it. So it's just about practicing, really, practicing the shapes. You can refine those a little bit if you want to. I'm just going to take some of the white or put some of the white back in with my kneadable eraser, particularly just in the feather veins here. So I just want to take some of that out to increase the shape of the feather, to let that be a bit more obvious. Don't have to take a lot out. It's just a very subtle sort of line to create the direction. And then over here on the neck, I'm going to take a bit more out there too. You can kind of draw with your kneadable eraser. You just need to keep kneading it so that you find a clean spot. But it's fun to sort of use to, get some nice shapes and shading in there too. So use it to put these lighter feathers back in around that neckline there. So yeah, that's working really nicely, and it kind of smudges the charcoal too. So you get this beautiful soft effect, which is what you want for these feathery sort of looks. It's quite nice. You could potentially keep working in the charcoal and just make this a really great picture, actually. Charcoal's beautiful to work with. I'm going to go back up into the head and just very slightly fill some of that in too. I know it's obviously red in the photo, but in here it's a mid-grey. So I'm just going to make that a mid-grey. Put a bit more emphasis on the shadow on the beak there, and a little bit more around the eye. And then if you can find a small dot on your eraser to get that shiny little, tiny little white dot in the eye to give it the shine, that'd be good. Use your finger if you want to smudge it in, just to soften it off. Your fingers are really good for blurring off your charcoal and to get, get those lovely mid-greys happening. A few more feathers back over this first lot. And we've got the eye there. So we've got the eye, which is a mid-grey, and then you've got the pupil in the middle, which is very dark. Hard to get the variation going on. Little pupil there. Doesn't matter, we don't have to be too precise with this, it's just a practice. So this is going to be the trickiest part, and then you want to find either a white pencil or use your eraser to get a little dot in there. I just put my dot in, but now I've lost my eye, my pupil again. Bit of fiddling. So these tiny little areas are a little bit harder to do. And if you do have pencils handy, then that's what's going to help. So it's good to have a few pastel pencils on hand for this kind of thing. And when I first started, before I could, get a set of them, actually it was a Christmas gift, which was a lovely gift. I used to just have a white pencil and a black one and a mid kind of a rosy pink one. And they were my 3 basic pencils that I would use just to get fine detail in, to draw my picture up with. You need white to get your highlights, but also to work on dark paper. And then you need black for the other reason, to work on light paper and just to get fine lines, like things like eyelashes and, very soft little marks that are hard to do with big chunky sticks of pastel. Okay, so that could do with a lot more work, but we're going to leave it there and move on to do the colour version. So if you feel inspired, you can always come back and have a bit of a play with this and finish it off later, because it is beautiful to work with. I really do love charcoal. I did a class with a guy called Ray Coffey in Brisbane. He's an amazing artist, and he runs art classes at his house. In Albion somewhere. And so I went and did his little 6-week beginner course. It was fabulous because I just used charcoal pencils and learnt to really do very detailed shading and to look at the tones. And we did a skull, which was fun. So a white skull, and drew that with charcoal. And I forget what else I did. Something else. But yeah, it's a really good little course. So if you're looking for some drawing, he's really good at teaching drawing. And he runs them all different times, night times, daytimes, stuff. And I think there's only, maybe 6 people in a class. It's just at his house. Lovely, lovely guy. Very good artist and a great teacher. So if you're looking for more, drawing education, he would be my recommendation. He's great. All right, Ray Coffey, Coffey in Brisbane. All right, let's get on with our coloured version now. Pop that aside. We've had a little practice. Now we're familiar with it, so we should be able to draw it up again. Really easy. Always good to practice these things. The more you do it, the better you get. Okay, so you want to get your colour picture ready. Beautiful. Prop that up somewhere so you can see it nice and easy in front of you, so you don't have to move your eyes too much. So I've got it on my left side on the printed one. I've got the iPad on the right, so can't go wrong. But so many options now. These are the colours I've decided to use today, and I may go and grab some more, depends. But I thought I'd start off with these ones. So what I've got is trying to make sure I've got a nice range from dark to mid to light. Okay. So I've got black because that's going to give us some punch. It's really going to make the darks really lovely and rich and dark and lush. I've got purple because purple's beautiful. And because we're doing lots of loose sort of marks today, I won't need to break that most probably, unless I wear it all the way down to the plastic trim there. But that's a nice purple. It's a nice. Actually, let me do some swatches. So this is our paper that I wet yesterday. Remember I gave you a little demo yesterday about how you can wash in your pastels. So I'm just going to use that as my swatch page now. And then I'll wash that in later and make something even more fun. So that's my beautiful purple. Yum, yum. I'm going to do this from dark to light. So it's important to make sure you've got a nice range of tones. Then I've got blue. This blue is beautiful. It's going to be yummy, yummy, yum in the rooster's feathers. So it's lovely ultramarine blue. You may not have more than one blue, but if you do, then maybe this beautiful sky blue will be a nice option as well. And then I picked up orange because yum. Now, if you've got the Art Spectrum set, you won't have a really bright orange. It'll probably be a bit more browny than that, but that's okay. Just use whatever you have. It's hard to get good oranges, but these ones are gorgeous. That's the Blue Earth brand. Beautiful set of orange. Then I've got a green. So I've got a bit of everything really today. All the primaries and then all the secondaries, basically. Green, lovely, bright, kind of limey green. Whatever green you have will be perfect. If you've got like a more bluey green or an aqua green, that'll also be gorgeous. Red, hard to get good reds. It's an Art Spectrum, feels like one. Reds are usually very dry and dusty and crummy. But red's going to be yummy because we've got a lot of red in there. And then I've got a beautiful bright sunshine yellow. Again, yellow is often a hard one, or like crummy and hard and difficult sometimes putting it over the other colours. So see how you go. And then I've got a pale lemon because I'll, as I said yesterday and the day before, I really prefer using my very light yellows as opposed to just white for my brights. I find the yellows a lot warmer and sort of, I don't know, sunnier. And then white, of course. This is a schminky white, so it's very creamy. It's nice. That's going to sit on the top really beautifully. But whatever white you have will be fine. So we've got every colour of the rainbow basically today. We've got our 3 primaries, our 3 secondaries, which is what we made on the colour wheel the other day. And then I've got an extra blue and a black, and an extra yellow, and a bit of white. So there are our colours, and we're going to have a bit of fun. But first up, we've got to draw our rooster again. And I suggest using charcoal or a white or light coloured pencil, depending on what colour paper you're on. So I'm on a darker paper today. So I'm going to use a light pencil so I can see what I'm doing. Just going to, this is my secondhand tape that I've been using. Hang on, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. That's a bit close. Fix my focus. Good. All right. So I've got a dark green paper and just a bit of tape on each corner to make sure it stays nice and still. When you're putting tape down, just stick it onto something else first so it doesn't tear later on, because these are very, very sticky, these tapes, and they can tear your paper. All right. So taping that down like that, we're working portrait today. So long ways, straighten that up. Lovely. Now, using my light pencil, I'm going to draw in my grid line. So this time we'll measure it up properly. So this page is 23 wide, which means 11.5 is my halfway mark. So I'm going to mark that in top and bottom and then rule my line down the middle. I'm just going to rule it lightly because I want to be able to take that off later on. Because I'm not filling in the background, I want to make sure that I can get that off later. Okay, and then halfway on my side is, so that's 30, which is 15. So 15 is my halfway line mark. Or 150, whatever you want to say, 150 mil. And then rule that across there. Beautiful. Pop your ruler away, we won't need that again. And we're going to do the same process, just drawing up the outline of this guy. So we're not going to worry about the colouring in bit yet. We'll just draw up the outline. And again, you can use that negative space again if you feel the need, if that's going to make it easier for you. So make sure you've got your picture nearby and we can look at each quarter again. So let's look at that top left quarter again. let's use the negative space this time to draw the shape in. So we can see that it intersects here on that middle line, and then the crest intersects at about there on the center line at the top. And so we can kind of figure out the top of the head sits just below there. So it's around about there and about a quarter of the way in. So about there. So if that's the top of the head where this line of the neck intersects with the crest, then we want to draw a lovely arc from here to here. Yeah. So we'll do that. Just draw that down through there. Lovely. It's probably not quite perfect, but that'll do for now. And then we need to draw the shape of the crest coming out from the head. So again, if you're having trouble doing it by looking at the rooster, then just look at the negative space, so the white space, and draw that shape. It's amazing how putting it into reverse sometimes really helps to see it better. Okay, so that's that bit. Now we can come across into the right-hand side and continue that through. So we can just keep carrying on with that. The little crest comes down to some funny little shapes there. And then we've got our beak. So the beak comes down. If you want to measure anything, so if you're not sure where something sits within the picture, you can kind of have a look on here and you can think, okay, so if this image that I've got here, my quarter is 10 long, so my halfway mark would be about there. So you can actually break this down into more grid marks if you wanted to. So that's my halfway mark there, okay? So then I can come back over to here and I can find the halfway mark in here. So that's 15, so half is 7.5. So that means that the beak will have to sit just above that halfway mark, about there. The bottom of the beak will be about there. So see how you can use measurements to figure it all out. It's such a great way to get your drawing right. I mean, you can always trace things, and if I'm doing very intricate work and I really want to get the drawing perfect, I will trace it. I'll actually print off, you know, pieces of the drawing, put it all together and then trace it and then mark it on like that. So that, you know, there's lots of different ways you can do it, but if you can learn this, it'll really help you get your drawings right. Okay, so just coming down there with the shape of the beak and then the thingy under the beak, and then we're going to come out with the into this, yeah, this corner. So we've got this little bit of feather that comes across that corner there. Amazing, down through there. And then we've got the tail feathers on the other side. So see again how looking at the negative space or the white area around it really does help to work out where to put everything. So I can see now, because I've put my halfway mark on the picture, I can see that the tail feathers almost level with that. Pretty close, pretty close. So I can use that mark on here now to start my tail feathers about there. Yeah. So all these little tricks and tips that you can use to do your drawing. So bring that down and then down again, and it comes to about here in the quarter, in that segment. So then I can just sort of do this line down through there and join up those bits. And I can put my little triangle up here on the tail feathers where they join or finish on the side. Coolio. Lovely. Now let's come down into this bottom right-hand corner. So we've got our triangle bit here. This is my negative space I'm looking at. Triangle there. And then over onto the other side, we've got the feathers that come down through here. So that little shape that runs down through there, that white section there, which will become your background here. So I can come down about, again, you can measure this if that makes it easier. So my halfway is there, which means quarter is there. So you can find your halfway lines, then find your quarter lines, and really helps, really helps to figure out where things need to sit. And halfway line. Again, this is like drawing up more grids. Okay, so now I know that this bit here starts at about there, just above your halfway mark. So I can put a mark there and then come in, do your wispy feather down through there, and then come across and carry that on down through there. And then got this long, beautiful long feathers that come through here. And then the body of the rooster comes down slightly less than halfway across there. So it comes off the page at about there. Okay. So that's that quarter. And then we'll move over to the last quarter. And that is basically just this white triangle, pink bit on the left here, and then another bit down through there. And that's our chicken or rooster drawn in. Beautiful. Lovely, lovely. If you want to look at the face and start to sort of just sketch in some of those sections that are there, so you can come around and look at, you know, the shape of the eye and the crest. When you draw up like this, it's great, but you'll often lose your lines. Once you start putting the pastel on, you kind of lose them a little bit. But again, it's still really good because you've kind of rehearsed where everything is. And so it doesn't hurt to draw up as you go, even if you do lose the lines. Okay. So I'm just putting in the shape of the eye, and then there's that little ear area there, and we've got that little funny white shape thing. That is, but that thing there, that's white. And then you've got your bit under the mouth there. So it's good just to get a bit of this information in so that you're kind of putting it into your memory, and we can come back and put the detail in after. There we go. Something like that. Beautiful. All right. So as I said, we're going to leave the background empty today. Or if you want to, you can fill it in. If you prefer, if you don't like the colour of your paper, you're welcome to fill in the background and change it. You could probably do that later. There's not a whole lot of detail in this where it would be a problem to do the background afterwards. Probably around the tail feathers here might be the only area where you'd want to pull those feathers down out over the background colour. So I would, you know, if you want to fill in your background, maybe do it in here at least before you start on the rooster. But all the rest is fairly straightforward. It's pretty clean lines everywhere. But yeah, save yourself the trouble and just use nice coloured paper. So let's get started. Put my image up there. We'll do a little bit now, and then we'll have a short break, and then we'll come back and finish it off. So what we want to do to start with is get some of the darks in there. So with pastels, it's always advisable to start with the darks and then go light. So I like to do that because it just makes it a whole lot easier to put your lights on the top at the end. And it's an opposite to watercolour, for instance. I think you do lights and then darks in watercolour. So I've got black. I'm actually just going to go and grab, I think I want a blue violet, which is a dark, dark purple. So it's not quite black, but it's very dark. So I'm going to grab one of those because I just don't want to put black down just yet. So if you have a blue violet, it's called. If you've got the Art Spectrum set, you should have a blue violet there. Let me have a look. Flinders Blue Violet. So I'll just show you. This one actually still has its name on, so you can see that that's what that is. Flinders Blue Violet. I'm going to peel the sticker off because I've obviously used it all up and I can't get to it. So these stickers are rotten to get off sometimes. They kind of tear halfway. Blue Violet is very crumbly. It's already broken in there, so that's good.
So I don't have a blue violet, but I've got a darker blue than I usually use. Could I use something like that instead?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Anything dark, like really, really dark.
Awesome.
Dark blue would be beautiful, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to buy more of those. Gorgeous. So that's my blue violet, and it's a really good go-to to have in your box for putting your darks in. Beautiful for shadows and for landscapes, you know, to get your darks under your trees and that kind of thing. I use it a lot. It's probably one of my most used colours. So I just prefer it to black. It's a little bit warmer, more interesting. All right, so let's pop a bit of this down. You don't want to use too much, okay? So just wherever all the dark area is. So I can see there's dark. We'll start up here under the chin and just very softly pull it down. We don't want to fill the paper up too much just yet. We just want to get some of this down. So then that'll give us a nice base to start working on. Leave the area where all the yellow feathers are in the picture, or the lighter feathers, and do these little movements like this. So you can see I've got it on its side, it's got a short piece. I'm just doing these little movements like that, and I'm running it down in the direction that the feathers are growing. So always think about which way the thing's growing or moving, or I don't know, whatever that you're doing. Okay, so we're trying to emulate that feeling. You want to get that beautiful, fluffy, lush, thick feeling of the feathers all layering on top of each other. So see how that's starting to look sort of feathery. I mean, it's very basic just yet, but that's going to give us a nice base to kind of build on. And we want to get a nice dark down there to give us a good foundation to kind of put everything on top of. Groovy. Then up in here, so same sort of thing, we've got feathers that run up this way, a little one at the back there. And then we've got this other feather that comes around like this. So just pull that pastel around in the direction of those feathers. Okay, it's really important to try and emulate the shapes and the direction of everything. And then we've got other feathers that sort of overlap this way. So you can see I've started at the back of the tail, and I'm kind of working down towards the body. And the reason for that is that these back feathers are overlapped by the ones in front of them. So you've got to kind of work from the background to the foreground. And to me, these look like they're all sort of at the back. So this one, this little one here on the right, or big one, I should say, is sitting under that one. So you want to kind of make sure you get that in there, and then that one sort of on top of it. And then the next one goes in a different angle. Okay. Now we don't want to put too much pastel down just yet, because we want to try and leave some of this area sort of free to get some lights in there. So just gently pull it around, emulate some of that shape. So between the body and the tail, we've got these gorgeous orange feathers. They're sort of long and lush and they hang down. So just do a few strokes like that, but keep it light, because what we're doing is just building up like the shadows that are going to be underneath those feathers, basically. So this is all sort of the shadow work. We're probably not going to blend a whole lot today. This class is really just about trying to stay quite loose. So keeping your fingers out of it, which is hard sometimes, and using the pastels themselves to blend with each other. So that's going to be the goal. I'm just going to darken off in the eye there a little bit, and see just around where the shadow is on the eye. If you pop a bit of this in those areas. So this is why we put the darks in now. So we just want to get a little bit of information in there so that when we put the other colours on, these shadowy colours will be underneath and will sort of start to give it that beautiful 3D effect. So just using the very edge of that pastel, so the sharper edge, so I can get a finer line, and putting a little bit of shadow in around the face there. So just noticing where the shadows are. We've got a shadow inside this section here that hangs below the beak. And then we've got dark on top of the beak and around the edge of it there at the top where it meets the crest. We've got dark in the eye. So that's going to be the fiddly bit. If you have a blender, that'd be helpful, but it doesn't matter if you're not, if you don't. At least if you have a pencil, that'd be good for later. And then just putting some dark in around those little dark areas where we know that we're going to need some shadow later on. Okay. So that's what we're doing, creating some shadow for the underneath of the feathers. This is the foundation layer. You won't see all this at the end. I'm going to go over it many, many times. All right, so let's have a little break. It's 10:05. Let's come back at 10 past and then we'll go crazy with colour. Feel free to carry on if you want to. But yeah, I thought we'll just have a little water break. So I'll see you back here in 5 minutes. All righty, are we ready to go? Just check back with everyone. We're all there. Excellent. Good. I think I'm 1 minute late, sorry. All right, let's get cracking. So we're going to start to lay some colour on here and see how we go. Just want to check that I'm still recording. Yes, I am. Lovely. Sorry for those watching the recording. You just had a 5-minute break. All right, let's get going. So what I want to do is start to put some colour up into those back feathers in the tail there, and we'll kind of work down from the tail into the body, and then we'll go to the face and finish off up there if that's all right. So I don't know about you, but in those tail feathers, when I zoom in on my iPad, I can see a lot of kind of green and blue in there, which is very nice and lush. And because we've already put some dark down, if you have a lighter green, it'll be all right because it's going to kind of blend in with that dark, deep purple that we've already used. So I'm going to try this green and see how we go. So let's just kind of smudge it on. This is a chunky stick. You might have a thinner stick, so it might be a bit easier to manage. But we're sort of more drawing today rather than blending. So that's kind of interesting. If you've got a white outline like I have, when you drew up your rooster, you might want to try and cover that up or rub it off. Okay. Now, the other feather we want to start with is this one down here underneath everything. So that's quite dark. I'm going to make that purple. Put a bit of purple in there. Okay, and darken that off. So what you've got to look at is the shape of each feather and see which way it's kind of growing or heading, which direction it's heading into. So I'm putting some purple in there, and I'm going to add a bit of that purple up here in the green too. So this is the fun part. This is where you get to kind of add some colour and see what happens. And if it gets a bit too dull or muddy, then you can come back in with the brighter colours and zhoosh it up a little bit. But I quite like what the green and the purple is doing there. It's giving me a really nice kind of goldy kind of effect. It's a bit fun. So purple down in this one here, and then I'm going to pop a bit of blue in too, just for fun to see what happens. So don't be afraid to try different colours. And as long as you're just using, you know, one little palette of colour. So you saw my palette earlier. It's right there actually on the screen, so that's handy. So if I just stick to those colours, then we should be right. It's when you start mixing too many colours that it gets a little bit crazy. Now I just popped a bit of blue up there in that top feather as well. So the blue and the purple and the green, they're all mushing together. They're making it quite like almost a luminous, beautiful, glowy effect. Okay, and I've got my dark blue in here. All right, so quite like what's happening there. I'll come back in with my blue violet now. So don't be afraid to come back in with your dark if you want to darken it up a little bit more. I'm just going to draw the vein in with the dark as well. I know it's a little lighter than the dark, but just to get the mark in there, and I'm going to just dab it gently with my finger. So you'll find you'll get quite a lot of dust on your paper. And if that happens, just tip it off onto that little extra towel or paper towel that you've got next to you, hopefully. Try not to blow it. I don't want to do that. All right, so can you see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but on this feather here, there's a tiny bit of a shine just in here. I'm going to use my green for the shine because it's not a bright white shine. It's just a very subtle little bit of a shine that might be catching the light right on the edge. I put my lighter green, it's a limey kind of green down on there, and then I'm just going to go over it gently with my purple to sort of push it in a little bit, but not too much. So see how that's just softened it off a little bit, but it's created a very subtle little shine right on the edge there. So it's all these little things that you want to start to notice is where's the shine, where's the light, how is this, you know, catching the light, which bits in shadow and all that sort of stuff. And then just using different colours or tones to indicate that. So even though that's a very subtle little shine on there, it's important because it tells us which direction the feather's going in. It tells us where the light's shining as well, down onto the picture or the rooster. Okay, so that's that little one. Now I know we've got a vein in there that's quite light, but it's not white. It's definitely not white. So I'm going to try and use this mid blue. It's a sky sort of blue to create the line for the vein. Okay, so see how that's now created a lovely little subtle line. I'll just bring it in a bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. So very light, it's a light sky blue. I've just put a soft line there to create the vein. Now up close, it looks a bit messy. Pastels always look messy up close, but when you step away, that's when you can see all the beautiful little subtle lights and darks. That's all you need to do for that. It's got a little bit of a shadow either side of that vein. So you can just, I'm just going to dab it very softly to push the crumbs in a bit. And then I'm quite happy with that feather. It can just stay just like that, I reckon. Now I want to do the same thing. I like what the vein did there with the blue. So I'm going to try and do the same sort of thing up in this top feather. It's got a very strong white vein, and so we might need to whiten that up. But let's see if this will be enough or not. Maybe it is, because maybe we don't want to draw attention to that. Everything that is bright or light or white is going to sort of catch the eye sooner than anything else. So if you want to quieten something down or you don't want to draw attention to something, you can soften it off and not use colours that are quite so light. So that's where the light blue or a light purple even, or even, you know, anything sort of not too light like a white, but lighter than the colours you've already got in that area will help to give you the little highlights without being too bright. So it's just thinking about all those subtle changes and things, isn't it? Let's do this big feather here. So we've got our beautiful blue violet down underneath it. So that's nice. It's got a nice dark base to start with, which is quite delicious. And I'm going to put some green. I know there's like a teal green in that. And I don't have one in my box. I need to go and get one, I think. I think I do. I can't resist the temptation. 1 minute. So this tealy sort of a green, it's a cool green. It's more bluey green than yellow green. So I've got two greens now. I've got that green and that green. So they're quite different, aren't they? But they'll be yummy, yummy, yum together. So I can see this colour in that feather. And it's kind of on the edges. So because this is a short piece, I can just sort of use the sides of it to try and create a sort of edge coming out from the center. Okay, so what I did was I just lay this down on the edge. There's a nice sharp edge on here. If you haven't got an edge, you can just use the side. So if you've got a round pastel, just use the side, put it about where the middle section of the feather would be, so the vein or the center area, and just pull it out. And that way you get kind of this lovely soft sort of effect without filling it in too much. And that way you can still see the beautiful purples underneath and the darks. And do the same going the other way now. So if you start back in the middle and then just gently pull that out towards the edge. Like that. So then you're getting this beautiful soft effect. And I can now come in and do a bit more detail. So you can see there's a little bit more detail in there. Just using the tip of my pastel to get that sharp edge. So I put a few little feathery sort of shapes in through there. And then maybe some on this side as well. This colour is glorious. If you're on black paper, it'll be yummy. So I'm going to put a bit of that over in that feather too. Because all these feathers are sort of the same colour. So we kind of want to try and make sure you keep a bit of the same sort of colours in each one. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? I like that. And again, that one has a very light vein, but I'm going to use my light blue initially. So I like to sort of start off gently, and then if I feel like it needs to be lighter, I can still do that. I can still go lighter. But I like the blue. I'm going to leave it at that for now, and maybe at the end when I come back and reassess everything, I might use something a bit lighter. But for now, I'm quite happy to leave that with the light blue. Just smudge it in or dab it in rather than smudge, or just dab. So there's lots of different gestures you can do with your fingers in pastels too. You can kind of dab or smudge or pull, do all sorts of different movements to create different effects. Groovy. Okay, let's move on. So we've got a big, beautiful, what looks like a big, beautiful feather here. It's a bit of a blurry picture, this one, but it kind of goes down through there. There is a little bit of a brownie sort of feather also under. I don't really want to make that a feature, but we can just sort of fill in this section here just to make that look fuller. Okay, don't have to put too much detail into that. I just leave it like that. It's a brownie color. If you want to use brown, I just picked up the green because I like it. Okay, so now this feather here comes across there and down through there. So I'm going to pull it all the way to the edge because that saves me putting something in behind it. Where does that go? It's hard to see. It comes around like this. That's that feather there before the white bits. Okay, so we've got that kind of shape there, and then there's another feather under there. So we want to do that one first because it's underneath. So there's this one in here, and its little vein, it kind of has this arc. It's going like that. Okay. So we want to do the same sort of thing. Pull it from the middle of the vein out, and I'm using that lovely green again, and then do it on the other side too. Because this one sits under that one, so we need to do the under one first. And then we can come back and put the other one over the top and sort of overlap it a little bit. So we don't need to put a whole lot of detail in that either. We can just leave that sitting there like that. Notice though that it is darker up here underneath where we're going to put the next feather. So it's much darker there. There's a lot of shadow falling onto it from there. So we can just put a bit more of the blue violet or your dark blue, whatever you're using, in that section there to give it some shadow. And you can gently pull that across with your finger. Don't blend too much because you'll just lose all the vibrant colour. And then you'll have to pop it back in again. And that also has a little vein on it. So I'm going to just use my blue again. It's my new favourite vein colour. Put a little line through there. And then I can just smudge that off a little bit to make it go off into the distance. So everything that's often further away from us is always a little bit blurry or sort of softened off. Your colours are not as strong when they're in the distance, and then they get stronger and your line gets sharper as you come forward. Okay, so we can keep that one back there. Then coming down under that again, we've got sort of some browny, orangey, feathery colours through here. So I'm just going to pop a bit of orange in here. That's this bit here. And there's a little bit of a highlight just there in there. So I can use my orange or your terracotta colour, whatever you have in your box. It doesn't have to be super bright. By the time I blend this with a bit of my dark, it's going to turn dirty anyway. So that's just another bit of feather that's wandering around in the back there. And that'll make sense because we'll use that colour again as we come forward, so it'll all tie together. Now there's also another little patch of dark. You can see a black or dark triangle just under here. I'm going to put a bit more, I've just put a bit more of the blue violet or dark purple, whatever you're using for your dark, onto that just to give it some shadow. And it also has a little vein, so I can use my blue again for that. Dab it in and soften it off a little bit. Harder to see on me. And the edge of that, so the outside edge, which comes down here, is a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to add a bit more orange on the edge there to brighten that up. Just to give it a bit of shine. And there's also a shine up in here. So there's it's a little, actually a little white patch, but I don't want to draw attention to that. So I'm just going to use my orange as my bright section through there. I might put orange over the vein as well because the blue's not quite doing it. Okay. So that's nice. That's catching a little bit of light. It's creating some beautiful bright colours and a bit of interest. Lovely. So now we can come back into that big feather at the back there and kind of bring that down over the top of these two colours that we just did. So just draw in the basic shape, sort of arches around like this and over that one. I should bring that in a bit further. Sometimes you might have left a gap or something, so you might have to fill it in or pull it in a little bit further. And then we've got this big feather. So I'm going to do this with the green at this stage. I might add some blue and purple and things to a bit of a play with it. And it's got a little bit of a highlight on the edge as well, so we can add that on too. Bring that out. It sort of comes out slightly further than the top feather. And then just filling that in with some colour. Make sure you leave that area there where you need to put the white with the light colour, because if you put colour down under the white, it's going to be harder to make it white. I mean, you still can do it, but if you can possibly leave your paper empty around there, as empty as you can anyway, it'll be easier to get the white to kind of shine. This guy might look a bit more like a peacock by the time I'm finished with my beautiful teals and purples, but that's okay. I don't mind. Okay, so I've got some green on there and I've got a bit of purple in there, and I kind of just pulled it around gently with my finger to sort of merge those together a bit. Delicious colours, aren't they yummy? Right. And then I can put the vein in there. So the vein comes around and then down like that. I've done it dark. You can see in the picture it's quite dark, it's in shadow. So I've done that quite dark. And then we've got a few little dark lines coming through, which will be the edges of the feathers too. So if you draw some fine lines through there, just want to create a little bit of what looks like shadow through there. Okay. And then you can softly, actually I'm going to come back with my green now. So can you see there's a bit of highlight just through here? I'm going to use my green for my highlights through there. Because if I press a little bit firmer, and because I pushed it in earlier and it blended with the purple and the dark, it's gone a bit darker, which is lovely. But now I can come back with the pure green. So the same stick of green, but just press a bit harder and don't blend it in. And then we start to create these beautiful little bits of light that shine on there and make it look more feathery. Something. Cool. And then can you see on the edge of this one, there's a shine. There's a shine here. Now I might need to use my light blue to put that in. It's not white because it will be too bright. I'm going to try the green first. So I'm going to use my pure green just on the edge of that one. See, there's a little shine where I've just added that little bit of lighter green there. And I'm going to add blue over the top of it because I feel like the blue is going to just bring it up a tiny bit lighter. So this is where the tone is important. So even though things might have a shine or a reflection or something on them, doesn't always mean that it's going to be bright white. You can use your other colours in a lighter tone to create that beautiful shine. And leaving it on the surface, so try not to push it in too hard. Just let the pastel do the work and don't put your fingers into it. Something like that. So that's just got a nice little shine on the edge there. I might highlight those other little green ones just at the bottom too, to give that a bit more of a shine too. This will all kind of make sense when we finish up. So what we're doing basically is we're doing the detail as we go, and we're working our way around the rooster. So starting at the tail feathers and then coming forward. So as we come forward, we'll get a bit looser because there are bigger feathers as we come forward. Just want to put some more highlight in here too. It's funny when you keep looking at something, you see, oh, there's light there and there's a shine there. It's really interesting. Keep looking at it. Lovely. What makes the light shine is the darks. So if you've got enough dark under or next to something, then it'll make the lights really glow. It's an interesting.
May I ask? I noticed that even my darkest blue isn't very dark, so it's very peacocky, which I don't mind. But are we going to go over the top of this with blacks as well, or?
No, but you can, if you want to, put some black down as well as your dark blue.
Okay.
Yeah, just to, if you want to make it darker.
Yeah, because my purple's very light, my blues are very light, my greens are very light, so it's
yeah. So your darkest, what darkest have you got? Just your blue and your black?
Yeah, that's it. And even this, it looks dark, but it comes up quite bright.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So use your black. I'll
Yeah.
show you how. So this is a bit of black. So
Yeah.
if you want to get some darks in there, just put a tiny bit of black on, right?
Yeah.
Smudge it lightly. And I think your pastels are a bit harder than mine, so you might have to press a bit harder. And then pop your blue kind of over it and sort of blend them together on the paper. But if you want it darker than that, if you want it as black, then just leave it black. It's really personal choice, Louise. So yeah, if you want to, like I've got black here, if I want to darken something up even more, it's pretty great. It's pretty dramatic, but it's nice because it creates a bit more drama. So you can definitely just use black on its own if that's going to work for you. It's frustrating, isn't it, when you don't have the same colours?
It's okay. I mean, yeah. We've got to get used to what we've got, right? And
yeah.
If I was just learning by doing exactly what you're doing, then it's not going to be as effective, is it? So it's good, right? I'm not concerned. Excellent.
Good. Yeah, you do have to work with what you've got. And going forward, if you continue on, then you might go and get yourself a bit more colours and yeah, it's taken me years to build up my collection.
Oh, I can imagine, because I was looking at the prices of all the pastels and I'm going, holy moly.
I know, they're very expensive.
I'm buying another set at the moment.
Yeah, I know, I get it, I totally do. But yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years, so I've got a pretty good collection now. And I don't need to buy them very often. It might be one or two colours I'll grab, but yeah, it takes a long time. It's a good idea for Christmas and birthday presents.
They're at the end of the year, unfortunately.
Yes, everything I've got's in December, which is really annoying. Yeah, but I always order pastels. The kids say, what do you want? I just go, oh, I'd love this set, please. Yeah, it's good.
My kids aren't old enough to afford them.
Oh, well, you have to talk to your hubby then.
Yeah, he got me this set.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Very, very cool. All righty. Yes, it is expensive, but if it's something you love doing, and the beautiful thing is they don't go off, they don't dry up, they don't do anything, they just sit there. So they'll last forever. So they can't ever, you know, expire basically, which is kind of cool. All right, so yes, by all means add black if you don't have any other darks. But, you know, I highly recommend getting that Flinders Blue Violet for a dark if you do want to carry on, because it's such a lovely, lovely, lovely colour to have in the box. Beautiful. Let's move on now, and we're going to carry on with this. So what we've got up to is this little white patch of feathers, and there's some little kind of black ones actually that are coming out of there. So I'm going to put some white on before I lose my spot. And I'm not going to put it on too hard because I don't want it to be super bright white. There's still going to be, you know, texture and shadow and stuff underneath it. But it definitely has a little white patch in there. So that's that funny little shape there. And then I'm just going to get my picture zoomed out. And then, oh, come back. And then we've got these little wispy bits that sort of wander across like this. So that makes it fun. So you kind of just got to pull the pastel across sort of softly. Don't press too hard, because if you need to undo it or change it or fix it or go over it or something, then you can. Okay. And we've got these interesting little shapes, isn't it, in this one? It's a lovely little feature on this fella. It's this little white patch of feathers. And then it comes across, we've got a sort of a dark patch, like a line in between the two white sections. And then this bit comes down sort of through there. I need to add a bit more orange and black in there. But that's basically sort of the white area that I want to mark out at this point. I can come back and whiten that up if I want to, or I can use a different colour if I don't like the white. I can go for a very light blue or a very light something else, green or whatever. It might be fun too. So around the white though, we've got a bit of black in there, or dark. So I will use black because it's got such a nice punch to it. So you can come in with your black sort of around here. Pull it down through there. So we're starting to do these long sort of sweepy feathers that are going to come around now and be a different shape to the ones we've just done. So we'll do that. And this one comes through to here. So you might have to sort of overlap in a few spots to get your shape right. It's a bit tricky, this little intricate bit. Just putting a bit of black around through here, and then I'm going to come in with some green on those longer feathers at the bottom there, and a bit more, and then orange. And because we've got the dark in there, the blacks or the purples, the orange is going to pick that up and sort of start to go sort of brownish, which is fine. Right, so that's my white. I'll come back in and tidy that up again after. See on the left hand side of that white, we've got a bit of orange there. So between the back of the neck and where the tail starts, just in here, there's a little bit of orange feather in there. So you could probably mark a bit of that in there with your orange or your terracotta kind of colour, whatever you happen to have. Okay, and then we've got some orange coming down through this black section. So these are long black feathers that are coming down through here from the white area. Sort of have a bit of orange in them too, which is quite nice. So lovely long sort of sweepy movements with your pastel. So we're doing more drawing than blending today. Okay. And before I go any further with that, because I want to bring all this orange now and start to drag all that around through here at the base of the tail. But before I do that, I want to get those greeny feathers in that are down in here. So see it down the bottom here, we've got these, it's like a beautiful, that rich teal sort of green, beautiful green, so nice. So I'm just going to draw some of that in there. And I can pull a bit of my purple or my black or whatever you have that's dark in through there to get a bit more tone. So that's quite lovely around in there. And then most of that green area sort of just stops there, and then we'll move forward into the orange, some orange kinds of tones. However, if you want to put red or yellow or whatever in here, you can, because it's your rooster. So this is the fun bit. You get to choose the colours, you get to choose what you want to put in there. So for instance, I could pick up this red, which is lovely and bright, and I could start incorporating some of that in through where the orange will be. Let's see what happens. So that's lovely. Now notice I'm doing longer kind of marks now, longer sort of drawing these beautiful big lines through here. So I'm going to put a bit of red in there. I might even pop a bit of red up in here just for fun, because the red and the teal green is glorious together. So nice. So nice. I love those colours together. Okay, so that's enough of the red for now. Then I can come back over that with my orange. So see how we're sort of layering this and we're making it more lush and thick, but using different colours to create a really nice sort of blend. And when you're drawing the feathers in like this, you want to start at the top. So start up here behind the back of the rooster and pull them down. You sort of want to make sure you retain that movement and shape so that they're growing from the same place. So always beginning up here at the top and then pulling down. Don't go up and down, because then you'll lose the integrity of the shape. We want to end up each mark with sort of a wispy end so that it's looking lovely and feathery and soft, if that makes sense. So see how that's now looking quite lovely because I've got a bit of red in there. It's created a slightly darker tone, but it's still within the same kind of colour range, I guess. Now, if you wanted to, you could come back in with a bit more red and brighten it up even more. I like that. It's quite nice. Yum, yum. This is fun. This is so much fun. And then you can come over that again with your orange and brighten it up again. So see how you can sort of keep layering and layering until you get this beautiful, thick, lush look. It's gorgeous. A bit like the grasses yesterday, but brighter. Okay. So that's basically the tail area done. I might just jump back into that little white section there and zhoosh a bit more around in there. So I'm going to press a bit harder now and just be a bit more defined with my white. And because I've got dark under there or around there, it's picking up a little bit of the dark, which isn't a bad thing because that's creating some nice sort of shadows and interest. Filling in a bit more of them to make that a bit more vibrant. If you're feeling it's too vibrant, then you can always shush it up with a bit of light blue or something. Let's see what happens if I do. I think it might whiten it down too much, but we'll see. The thing is with pastels, you can always try different things, and if it doesn't work, you can just go back over it again. Don't mind that. I'm going to tip off my dust though because it's in the way. Okay. Yeah, so that'll do for now. You can come back and touch up bits and pieces afterwards if you feel like you need to, once you have an assessment at the end. But let's get into these beautiful big chest feathers. So, yum yum. We're going to do them in blue and purple. How yummy is that? Might have to break this purple after all. Yes, I think so, because I want a short piece that I can kind of pull down in and do soft feathery movements with. So I'm going to get some of this plastic off here. Pastel out. Lovely, break it, give it a little break. So now I've got my blue and my purple. Gorgeous. So what's happening in here is we've got feathers overlapping feathers. So they kind of start at the top and come down. So we'll just do that. We'll start at the top and come down. We've already got a really nice base of dark. So when you're doing these ones, see how they sort of all overlap like this. So we want to be doing these sort of short, fat marks that will build up a beautiful texture of the lush, rich feathers that are overlapping each other. Okay. Once we've done this, we'll come back inside the tail in this section here. There's a darker browny orange patch of feathers there, but we need to get this stuff in first, so then we can put that over the top. So just doing these short movements like this, coming from the top to the bottom. So what I'm doing is laying my little stick of pastel down, pulling it down and then lifting it up. So I'm getting a kind of a wispy end on it, but a harder mark at the start. So when I'm putting it down, it's like causing a little line because I'm pushing hard, and then I'm lifting and pulling it up. So creating these wispy sort of shapes, I guess. And just noticing the direction of the feathers. So it's really important to notice which direction they're all heading in. Okay. So around the chest area here on the left, they're sort of coming around. So head around in that direction. Slightly slant your pastel stick so that you're getting the same impression, but you're coming around in a different directions, not up and down out there. It's on a little angle. And then as it comes more in towards the center, it gets sort of straighter. Okay. We've got beautiful orange feathers on the neck on the left and the right, so we're going to leave a bit of space for those, of course. Might pop a bit of purple under there though, because the purple is going to create nice shadow under that orange. So I'm just going to smush a bit of that in there. So that's one layer of purple, short, chunky feathers. Now let's use some blue and we'll do the same sort of thing. It doesn't have to be in the same place. This is a beautiful blue. Love, love, love this blue. Okay, same sort of gesture with your pastel stick. Short piece, flat on the paper, and then quick little, I don't know what the word is, zhushes. So that you get this lovely, soft, fluffy edge on it. Look at that beautiful purple and blue together. So nice. And we'll pop a bit of black in there soon just to get some more depth happening. So let's do that next. So we've got a nice blue and purple base, but it's not dark enough because we really want to go a bit darker so that those bright purples really pop, not purple, is it orange, really pop on top of this. So I've got my black now. So you can use black or blue violet, whatever you've got there. I'll do black because Louise has got black. And just the same gestures with that. But what we're doing is we're creating a really nice layer of pastels, but we've got the beautiful blues and purples underneath that create sort of a luminous, lovely luminous kind of colour. It's gorgeous. Beautiful. Putting in the black. Filling that all up, making it nice and lush. get it up under the neck there, under that dark. We want it really black under there so that the little red thingy pops and what. So we want to make the red nice and bright. To make that pop and be bright, we need to get the dark around it. So that it really does its job and it's not getting too much. So I'm putting a fair bit of this on. That is blue violet, sorry, it wasn't black. Oops. Picked up the wrong one. See, they look so similar. Although if I use black now, you'll see the difference. Yeah, well, that's nice. So the black over the blue violet now gives me a lovely, even darker kind of mark. Because all these feathers are all black or dark, but some of them have a little shine. So those ones on the chest on the left-hand side have a lovely little shine on them, don't they? Because the light's being caught on them. And under here on the left, we've got some nice shine through there too. So to put a bit of shine on there, we can use that light blue again, rather than a white, because white would be too bright. But you can use a beautiful light blue to get that shiny shine on there. Or even a pale grey would work, or a very light purple. Light purple is beautiful too for shines. Got lots of dust on the page now. But anyway, that's okay. So I'm going to pop a bit of shine just down here on the sides. Just through there. Tiny little bit, doesn't need to be very much, just with your lighter blue, the sky blue, and then we've got a little bit over here on the right as well. A little bit of shine on those feathers too. I'll just do the odd one here and there to create a bit of texture, a feeling of volume there. So that's quite nice. I'm going to tip off my dust. Lots of dust. Lovely. So I'm going to leave that as is for now. We can always come back in and tidy it up afterwards. You know, you could emphasize some of those little kind of black areas between all the feathers. So it's almost like a pattern, isn't it? It's a lovely little pattern like that. And you don't need to do that everywhere. So when you're doing things like this, you can just do it in a couple of spots and then we'll see it everywhere else because that's what we know. You know, the eye is amazing. It's amazing what we can see even when it's not there. So we don't need to do a whole lot of detail in everything. Okay, now let's get these brownie purple, what do they call it? Orange, I keep saying purple instead of orange. Brownie coloured feathers just in here, inside this area between the tail and the body. I'm going to use my orange because I know it'll go kind of dirty anyway on top of the purple, and that was my intention. That's why I put the purple there, so that it would pick up the purple and go sort of brown. So see how it's not quite as bright as the other orange. And that's because I'm just pressing quite lightly too. So I'm just pressing light, and what that does mean is it's not putting down quite as much pigment as I could do. So that's quite nice. That sort of continues the tail around into the body now. And we've got a bit of orange or brown down through here as well. So we can pop a bit of that down in there. Start of the leg, I guess. Very good at anatomy. Yeah, put a bit of that in there. And that's kind of that side complete now. If you wanted to dull this off or put a bit of shadow in, you can kind of dabble a little bit and pull some of that purple down into there. That's kind of continuing off the page, and it's not really where we want the people to look when they're looking at it. So, you know, it's just a soft blurred sort of part. As long as you've got the colour and the shape in there, it'll be fine. So now we want to start to look at the orange area on the top of the neck up here. So I'm going to use the same orange, and if you want to use a yellow or something else, or even some red might be nice, feel free to do that. And you can always brighten up an orange with yellow. So if you've got an orange that's a bit dull and you don't have a nice bright one, you can add a bit of yellow into it, which will make it a bit more sunny. So I'll show you how to do that in a sec. But let's just start here. So I'm going to start again with the edge of your pastel, because we're just drawing lines, and we're doing wispy sorts of lines down here through the neck. Okay, so the neck area is coming down through here, pulling all these beautiful feathers down around here. We're coming in over the purple, but I don't mind that because I think that creates a nice shadow effect. And we can brighten up the edge of that with a bit of yellow afterwards. And then down here into the top of the other orange feathers. So kind of overlapping into there. So that's quite nice. And you can see how that purple underneath now is causing these beautiful shadows. I love how that's looking. Okay. So you don't want to put too much information in there, just enough to feel like it's got the volume and the texture of the feathers. Lovely, lovely. Now, if you want to put a bit of yellow in just to brighten that up a bit more, so you can see here in this section, it's quite bright because that might be catching the light too. So I can add a bit of yellow over your orange, and that'll just give it a little bit of a highlight. See that? Just enough, a little bit of shine. Don't need a lot. Don't overdo it. If you overdo it, it kind of loses its vibrancy. And yellow is often a harder colour to get to stick to. For some reason, it's a very hard pigment, and it often, won't stick very well. But that little bit of shine just there defines the neck from the body, and just makes it a bit more interesting, I think. So feel free to do that, and we can pop a bit of. No, there's nowhere else I need to put yellow. I'll get tempted. I think I want to put that somewhere else. But if we're using it as a light source, then it would be too confusing. So we'll just leave it there for now. I always say for now because you never know. You can always come back and change things later. So that's that side, which is quite lovely. And then we can start to work on the other side. So the orange feathers on the left-hand side kind of start up around the eye, don't they? So we've got short little stumpy feathers up around the eye. And then as it comes down, it overlaps and gets brighter towards the bottom. So we'll start off up at the eye and just start to do some short little scratchy sort of marks with your edge of your pastel in your orange. We might need to quieten that down a bit if it looks too bright later. See how we go. Or you might need to brighten up the other parts, depends on what kind of orange you've got. So we can come down through here. And then as you come down the side of the neck, your strokes will get longer because they're longer feathers. Right, so we're just going to do a few in the orange, and then we'll come in with a bit of red in the darker areas, and then we'll put more orange highlights over the top. So we're just sort of slowly building this up. We've got some purple underneath already, so that's going to help us create shadow and tone. Coming down through here, it's beautiful, bright, lovely. You'll find as you do this, and if you're running into the dark section like I am, you're picking up the dark on your stick, and then when you put it down again, it kind of lands back in amongst your feathers. I'm not minding that so much. Sometimes it's a bit of a nuisance, but in this instance, I don't mind because it's sort of making it look a bit more full. So if you are picking up you know, darks from running over the top of them, don't stress too much because it's sort of adding to helping making this look quite lush. I'm just going to lighten up a bit through there. And then under the neck here, it kind of nearly joins up with the other orange feathers on the other side. Just a little bit, sort of sweeps in that direction. So you can see how that's coming right around. This is fun when we're doing this. So much nicer with bright colours. Awesome. So that's enough orange on there for now. Then I can pick up my red and do what we did before in those tail feathers where we wanted to get a bit more volume, a bit more depth into those orange feathers. So we can start up with the head because they're a little bit darker around the eye there. Short little marks through there. And then as you come down, you want to make your marks longer. So they start to feel like longer feathers. Now the red's doing the same thing. It's picking up the other colours. As I put it down, it's landing back on the page. That's okay. Don't mind that at all. So see how that's looking nice and rich and lush, beautiful. And now that's tying in with the colours in the tail. So see how it's all connecting now? It's always good when you have, if you have one colour somewhere, to put it somewhere else in your picture because it just makes everything work properly together. Put a bit of this blue in because I just want to see what happens. Just for fun. You don't have to do this bit. Sometimes I pick up a colour, I don't even look at what it is and just put it on. Sometimes it works and that didn't. So because it didn't, I can come back now with my orange and just go over it. See, so you can easily cover up things or change them. Yeah, nice. Now I want to put a bit of the yellow down in here as well because it's got a bit more vibrancy just at the bottom of the feathers there. And if you feel like adding more orange or whatever, do that. You know, it'll take a few layers, this paper. You can actually get quite a lot of layers on before it won't let you put it in. It's looking pretty good. Okay, now a bit of yellow through here just for some highlights. Like when you get your hair done, a few highlights in. That's nice. And again, that ties in with the other side. So it just kind of keeps it all connected really. If you feel like you've got too much orange happening and you want to get a bit more shadow back in, you can always pick up a purple or your dark. Well, dark might be a bit too much, but if you go gently, it might be all right. You can use purples and dark blues and all kinds to get a bit more of your shadow and tone. Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right, we're getting to the tricky bit. The tricky bit is this head because we've got a few little interesting shapes in there. And we're going to use a fair bit of red on the head because he's got the red crown, and red around the eye and under the beak. The eye is actually orange, if you look at it closely. And then the pupil's black, and then we've got a tiny little white shine in the middle of that. So that will be the tricky bit because it's so small. So let's get into the crest first. We'll do the big parts first with the red. You just want to sort of draw that shape in again and then basically just fill it all in with the red. And then we can add a bit of shadow and light after. Sometimes it's hard to see where to put the lines because these things are so chunky you sort of can't see over them to draw the lines. It's a bit tricky. A lot of it's guesswork. Okay, so I'm just filling all this in now, drawing the outline of the crest, filling that in with the red. So I might just smudge that a little bit with my fingers now, just to fill it up a bit more and smooth it out. The pointy bits are hard to get into with your fingers, so you try and, you know, not to smudge it too much. If you do, you can always tidy it up later with your eraser, hopefully. Sometimes the pigment doesn't come off very easily. You can see I'm just showing you there, trying to remove my white red mark. And yeah, it's, even though I pressed really light, it's still showing through. So sometimes it is really difficult to get those marks off. And the lovely thing is you can actually buy pastels the same colour as these papers. So these Colourfix Art Spectrum papers, they're all these names, they all have a name. I forget what this one might be, moss or something. But you can actually get a pastel the same colour. They're called Colourfix pastels. And they look exactly the same as your sticks, like your Art Spectrums. But they're usually in a separate container and they're the same colour as your paper. So then you can touch up your papers and it's not obvious. So that's kind of cool too. Very, very helpful. All right, so if we've got a bit of dark black or something, I'm just going to smush a bit of that around just to create. I just dabbed it on very lightly. That's my blue violet, which is awfully crumbly. Dabbed it on there onto that crest very lightly. And I'm just going to sort of dab my finger through just to try and create a bit of form, shadow form. Because it's not just a flat red, is it? It's got quite a bit of shine on there too. So just to create a little bit of form in there, and then it has got a bit of shadow. I'm going to try my light blue first. Is that light blue? It's green. It's hard to tell sometimes, they get so dirty. So I'm just going to use that to see if that's going to be light enough to add a bit of shine on here. Probably not. But it was a good try. Okay, so maybe we need to go for white. I'm just going to put a few little dots. It's not a lot, it's just a few little dots because this thing's quite bumpy and rough. And so it's catching some light in different places. Put a few little dots on like that, which looks silly, but we can dab those in and sort of push them off a little bit so they're not as obvious. And then if you don't like them, you can go back over with a bit of red. So you can kind of keep layering until it looks sort of okay. Something like that. It's just that you don't want a flat red shape because that's not what it looks like. You can still see some of my white outline there. I'll have to tidy that up later. Alrighty, so we'll leave that part and then we'll move on down to around the eye. So we want to put a bit of red around the eye as well. So that goes around this section here. I'm going to put red where the ear thingy is too, and then I'll go over it with a bit of orange after, because it's sort of a browny orange colour. And then down through here. The eye's nearly looking like an eye already, and I haven't done that much work, which is a blessing. Nice. And then red up around that beak area, just in through here. So see how because we put some shadow down in there before, it's now starting to work as shadow. So that's why it's a really good idea to place your darks down where the shadows are going to be, because it really just, once you put your other colours like this over the top, it sort of blends a little bit, but it stays there. So it starts to create this really nice 3D effect. Alrighty, so down through here and then into that gill thingy. So fill all that in as well. Notice the edge of that under the beak has kind of a little wobbly edge. That's not a smooth shape. So just give it a bit of a wiggle to get that rough outline around the edge. Fill it up with your red. And again, where we've put some shadow before, that's going to help us define that funny little shape in the lip. It's going to start to look like it's got a hole or like a funny cavity thing. So I've got my red in there. Just going to push that in with my fingers a little bit. Make it stick. Doesn't matter if you blur those shadowed areas, we can come back over those and sharpen them up. Just dab if you don't want to push. Sometimes dabbing is a really nice option. It sort of blends, but it doesn't mix the colours up too much. Lovely. All right, now I'm just, as I said before, I'm going to pop a bit of orange onto this ear piece here, just to make that look a bit more separated. And that's going to need a bit more shadow just on the right hand side. So a tiny bit of blue, violet or black or whatever you're using. A bit of shadow in there. And then just very softly just dab it with your finger and pull it towards the lighter side so that it starts to create this soft, smudgy section. We've also got some dark down through here, just between that white bit and the base. A bit of dark in there. I'm going to put another line back in here for the shadow around the eye. So it's lovely because I can see where it needs to go now. We put it in before. We made a little map. So now you can follow the map, which is great. And then down here in the gill, it's not a gill. Mark that in a bit more defined as well. And again, we can smudge that off, pull it out to the right a little bit so that it's pulling that little shadow shape out to the right, and it sort of smudges out then and it starts to look like it's 3D. Cool, huh? And if it doesn't, then you can sharpen up the edge of it. See how the edge of that is quite bright red. So I can come back with my red and put a harder line through there, and that just defines it even more, brings it forward. So now it looks like it's got a cavity or a gap there. While I've got my dark, it's going to come up here under the beak. So it's a little bit of mark or line up through here under the beak. And then we'll get into the beak in a minute. Seems like a bit of shadow just on that side there. So just noticing your tones, this is where you start to look for shadows and lights, figuring out where's it shining, you know, what's glowing, what isn't, what's darker, where is it behind something, is that why it's dark? It's all those things you need to be looking for and wondering, you know, why is that dark? It must be because that's casting a shadow over the top. So that means the light's coming from so and so. So it's all just figuring that stuff out. I'll make this a bit longer. And checking your shapes all the time too. So see how you kind of lose all your pencil marks once you start putting your pastel on, especially for the fine work. It kind of gets a little bit lost. So that's why rehearsing these things is really helpful, because it just helps you to remember where everything's got to go. Okay. I know there's light on that red thingy too, and we'll pop that in after. But I want to get the beak done. So the beak is an interesting colour, isn't it? It's sort of a, what is that? It's not white. It's more like a creamy grey kind of colour, which I don't have in my box here. I'm going to do it with blue to start. That'll do. It's all about tone, okay? So this blue is around about the right tone for the beak. It might not be the right colour, but it's pretty close to the tone. And then I can lighten it up a little bit with a bit of white or something else. So this is what you can do. If you don't have the exact colour that you need, you can just sort of make it. So let's fill the beak in with either a light blue or a creamy colour. just something that's not too dark and not too bright. Bring that through there, a grey if you've got a grey. And I'm just very gently putting some colour on here, just using the tip of my pastel because it's a small space. So when you're working in small spaces like this, you just want to use the fine, sharp ends if you can find them of the pastel. It's a little bit delicate. And again, that's when pencils come in handy too. So having pencils in your kit is a really good option because it just means you can get into the pointy bits. I don't mind that big being blue, it's quite nice. Or charcoal. Charcoal is a wonderful thing too. So I just grabbed a bit of charcoal just to put some of that kind of darker tone on the top of the beak. So with the charcoal, because it's a smaller stick than the pastel, I've actually got a bit more control. And so I can use that. I said that like it was a new discovery. It kind of is today. Okay, so just looking at where the little dark areas are around the beak, there's a little bit of dark on the left side underneath here. So you could pop a bit of dark charcoal through there. That carries on into the face then. You can also use your charcoal for your shadows amongst your face. Because charcoal is a bit softer, it offers us a really nice way of getting soft, beautiful, gentle sorts of shadows into different spots. So never disregard your charcoal. It's very useful. That worked out all right. Cool. And so don't mind that blue beak at all. I know it's not the right colour, but I think it kind of works with the rest of the rooster. If you're not happy with it, by all means, you can change it. We can add a bit of white. Let's see what happens if we do that. Put a bit of white on, just a tiny bit, not too much. And then you can just softly, softly push it in so it's not bright white, but it just lightens up that beak a little bit. Yeah, cool. Coolio. All right. So once you've done that section, then we need to put that funny little white bit in on the face. And we need to do the eye. So let's do the white bit because that's a bit larger. Get that done now. I feel weird putting this bright white thing here, but anyway, that's what there is. So that's what we'll do. And sometimes, you know, when you are doing a painting, you look at it and think, no, this can't be right. And then you try to fix it or change it or make it different. And you know what? It doesn't work. You've just got to paint what you see and not question it. Because that's what is there, basically. Unless you're doing abstract and changing it deliberately. But yeah, for realism kind of work, you just can't question it. You just got to do what's there. It's much easier. Save yourself a whole lot of grief. Especially doing things like you know, bridges and buildings. And you think, no, that can't be anything like that. Can't be, you know, whatever. And then you do it the way you think it should be. And it never works. Never. There we go. I just touched up around the edge of that to darken up underneath it with my charcoal. So just it makes it actually a brighter white now, but that's what's there. So that's what's there. Coolio. Okay. Still feel like it's too bright. It's driving me crazy. I'm going to blow it down a bit. A little bit of this blue. Just dabbing it on. Oh. Softly, softly. There, that's better. Doesn't stick out far, quite too much now. All right, this eye. So the eye is orange. We have a very fine black line around the outside of it. And then we've got the black dot. I'm going over time. I'm sorry, ladies. I kind of got distracted there. If you've had to go, then I'll send you the video. Anyway, let's make it orange. So a little bit tricky, but we want to kind of do the whole thing in orange. Like that. So just you want to use the very edge of your orange pastel See if you've got a nice sharp edge, if you can find one. It's a bit tricky. If you're lucky enough to have an orange pencil, then that might work. But it's not impossible. And if you fill it in too much, we can always put the black pupil back in anyway. So that's okay. So I'm just going to dab that once with my finger to push it in. Look, cool. Now let's try the charcoal to put the outline around it. So just very, very lightly drawing a black outline around the eye. That. I want to make the pupil a bit bigger because it is actually bigger than what I've got it there. So again, using the charcoal just to make a little circle. You can't see what I'm doing. Inside the eye, like that. And then I've put too much dark in there. Orange back in there. Ooh. That'll do. That'll do. So it's a bit tricky doing these finer things, but not impossible. And that's another reason when you are working in pastels to work big. The bigger you work, like A3 or larger, the easier it is to do all these finer details because then they're not as big or small, I should say. Small. So I'm just going to pop a bit more orange feather around the eye just to brighten that up a bit so you can run around and touch things up and make them a bit brighter if you want to, or refined or defined. I'm going to put a smudge of light just on this gill thingy, this thing that hangs there. So I've just picked up white and I'm just putting it on really softly, hardly touching the paper because I don't want to get too much on there. Just want to suggest a slight shine, and then I'm going to dab it gently with my finger just to push it in a bit so it's not too much. There we go. Beautiful. I reckon we're just about done. Just about done. So I think we've made a rooster today. Took a bit longer than I expected, but that's all right. Lovely. And then when you're ready to, with your kneadable eraser, you can just run around the edges and tidy it all up. If you drop some dust or want to get rid of pencil lines and things, clean it all up with that. It takes a little while. So when you are doing it with your eraser, if you're picking up just loose dust, I don't know if you can see on there, but because I've tipped my dust off a few times, it kind of catches on the paper because it's gritty. And so there's a very fine film of dust just in here. And you can kind of see just in there is the clean paper. So that's the greener paper. And then up here it's a bit darker. So when you are picking up dust like that, you just want to dab your eraser on. Okay, just dab it on like that. If you rub it, you're kind of going to push all the pastel back into the paper. So you just want to dab it so that it picks it up and doesn't push it back in. If you want to clean your paper up like that. So it's good to just dab and then just find a clean side again. Just keep dabbing so that you're not rubbing them in. Same on this side where I've tipped it off. On this side, it's all gathered around there. So you can see when I dabbed, I'm picking up a fair bit of the dust. I can just keep doing that, finding the clean side until I've got my paper nice and clean again. So the looser the dust is that's just sitting on the surface, the easier it's going to be to get off. And because this paper has such great, lovely grit for pastels, it's going to hang on to every little crumb the minute it's pushed in. So there you go. That's our rooster done for the day. How beautiful is that? And don't forget to sign it. So put your name on like that. Pastel pencils are the best, or charcoal if that's all you've got to put your name on. You might be happy enough to frame that one. I think we might be. It's a bit fun. So I'll pop all my colours away. The reason I have them in a box like that is that I can, if I don't finish it today, I can come back tomorrow and I know exactly what colours I've used in my painting. So you're not trying to figure it out if we're all in the same collection. Lovely. So I'll just switch back now to you and see how you're all going. There we are. How did you go?
I wish my body stood out a bit more, but I guess I can work on that.
Yeah.
I've touched up some outlines in the feathers, and so I'm going to have to go back over them just as
Okay.
so you know. But I'll give you a look in a second.
Give me a look. And Janelle, that looks amazing. Wow. I can't
Can I
even,
see? Oh, that looks fantastic.
doesn't it look great?
Yeah.
Oh, so nice. Well done.
Good.
Oh, that looks lovely too. Really good, Louise.
Louise, that was amazing.
Good.
Well done.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
you've
you.
done a beautiful.
Is it
Gorgeous.
it's on a black background, so the
Yeah.
body doesn't pop so much. But
Yeah, that's okay.
Lovely.
That's okay. I think it looks lovely on that.
yeah, I love all those
Nice.
colours of the feathers. Hey, it's
Yeah.
nice.
Feathers.
The red and the
The
Yeah.
colours are amazing.
Yeah, heaps of fun. No,
Yeah,
well done,
definitely.
ladies. You've done very well. That looks amazing. They're both so good. You should
Oh,
frame
thank
those.
you.
Yeah, should definitely frame those. They look great. Beautiful work. Lovely. Well, thanks for
Cool.
sitting with me. We went a bit longer, but oh well, never mind.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That's okay. No problem at all. It was lovely.
Good.
Joy.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. I'll see you
See you
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
For plum.
Bye.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you then. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Welcome.
Bye.